to item 8.1, the protocol for gender identity and gender expression, transgender and gender non-conforming persons. Moved by Councillor Aidan Johnson, seconded by Councillor Matthew Green. All those in favour? Carried. Sorry, Councillor
Madam Chair, I'm actually not on the committee officially.
We will move by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. All those in favour? Carried. May I please have a motion to approve the recommendations in the report as amended? Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, seconded by Councillor Aidan Johnson. All those in favour? Carried. Councillor Aidan Johnson, would you please present your motion?
I have an amendment. So
you have an amendment?
We have to rewind slightly. And it's straightforward, and we discussed it when Ms. Mendelson-Aviv was at the podium. Mayor Fred Eisenberger is serving as seconder. Basically, this is an amendment to Appendix A of the report, such that we include the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, those words, after the words in accordance with in the first paragraph of the first page. And if I might speak to this amendment, everyone heard Ms. Mendelson-Aviv's presentation. This is simply an acknowledgement that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is a base of the legal principles at stake and that inspire the protocol, and that's what the amendment is.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, would anyone like to speak to the amendment? On the main motion. Madam Clerk, following this, do we receive the amendment, or where do we go? Oh, there is no discussion. Or is there discussion? Oh, Councillor Whitehead? Oh, sorry. All those who moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Mayor Fred Eisenberger. All those in favor? Carried. On the main motion. Councillor Johnson, did you want to speak to that first? And then Mayor Eisenberger, and then Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the clerks for helping me work on the right language for the motion. It is the implementing motion for the protocol, which is an appendix to our staff report. I'll read it out. Whereas transgender, non-binary, and two-spirit people are an invaluable source of social wealth, and whereas Hamilton is on lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement and the traditional territory and waters of diverse First Nations, including those nations' two-spirit people, therefore be it resolved that report HUR 17002, respecting the protocol for gender identity and gender expression, transgender and gender non-conforming persons, be included in the protocol as Appendix C. B, that the Mayor correspond with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the Hamilton Police Services Board, and all Ontario municipal councils regarding the protocol, including a copy of this motion, the protocol and appendices, and an explanation of the protocol. And C, that the Mayor, on behalf of Council, send a letter to the board of our Hamilton, Niagara, Haldimand, Brant Local Health Integration Network, sharing the protocol and appendices with our LIN, particularly highlighting the paragraphs in the relevant staff report, re Transgender Health, and asking the LIN for its advice on best next steps toward the achievement of equality for transgender citizens in the context of our local provision of healthcare. That is the motion. And in terms of speaking to it, Madam Chair, my thoughts on the transgender protocol were basically provided when I spoke with Mr. Enos and asked some questions of him. This is the correct thing to do for equality. And if anyone wants to talk about it further, I'm happy to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Mayor Eisenberger.
Thank you, and having sat here quietly today and listened to some great presentations from all kinds of folks, but especially proud of the transgender and non-conforming persons that came forward very bravely in what has been and hopefully will not continue to be a hostile environment in our city. And I'm just so proud of what they brought forward today and the work that they're doing to push us towards greater equality for all people in our community. And I think one of the presenters said it best in just one very simple sentence, that every citizen of Hamilton deserves to live free of fear and discrimination. That is essentially what we're talking about here. And I think that is the essence of what we're doing today. For for all people in our community. And, you know, when I see Mayor of the City of Hamilton, it's not Mayor of the City of Hamilton for some people. It's the mayor for all people. It's the councillor for all people. And I think we have a responsibility to ensure that we make that non-discriminatory approach for every person in our community, especially true for our young people. And some of the comments that were made earlier were that you know, discrimination and bigotry is a learned behavior. And I sure hope that in due course of time it's unlearned in our homes and in our families and in many parts of our community. And by evidence of what we heard today from a lot of people that came forward and said we support this, it is not a religious issue. So one of the rabbis said very clearly that it shouldn't be a religious issue for me and it shouldn't be a religious issue for anyone else. This is about human rights. This is about... Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Was that a standing ovation? No. It really is about human rights, and I think you know, all the presenters today made all the key points, and I'm not going to go over them, but very proud of the people, the lived experience people that have come forward and demonstrated some of their pain in terms of how they exist and what they have to go through, and we need to make sure that we alleviate that sense of discrimination and fear wherever we can. You know, and interestingly enough, you know, these events are always motivated by an event. It's some occurrence that actually gets us to a point where we actually wake up and come to understand a circumstance that needs to be addressed. And that happened to be the HSR issue. And not to particularly fault the HSR driver, we just didn't have a process and a policy, not driver, attendant. We didn't have a policy in place that actually addresses this issue, and it's high time that we did. So thank you for all of you for being here, and you know, thank you for the leadership of Aidan Johnson. You know, Aidan has been and continues to be a vocal proponent. Yeah, you can clap for that, but vocal advocate for human rights. You know, not to narrow it down to any one particular category, just human rights for everybody. I think that's an experience that he certainly has earned and shared with all of us and brought us to a better place in terms of how we perform in our community for all of our people. So thank you all for being here, and I have no doubt that this is going to get fulsome approval, and rightfully so. At this point in our existence, it's time that we progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Eisenberger. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mentioned earlier that I had an interesting discussion with my daughter, who I indicated is very progressive. And when we have those discussions, she was pretty upfront about the fact that she was never trained or taught, or maybe that's my short fall in respect to how uncomfortable she might feel in these situations. But what I didn't say is she said very clearly that she was very supportive of recognizing all unknown should be left behind. So I want to make it clear that my daughter was very supportive. I remember just recently, not very long ago, that there was some concerns about the a committee and a number of people coming into the committee, and Councillor Green was good enough to let me know that there were some concerns. And so I pulled from my schedule and attended that meeting of the I'll get this wrong, thank you. So I attended the meeting just to be there for moral support, because I do believe this is about values, and I talked earlier about you know, tolerances and intolerances. I just hate those words. It's about what is right. And when I think about Hamilton, and the mayor and I were just having a brief conversation, there's a lot of first in Hamilton. We have led on many fronts, and I don't see why in the province of Ontario we shouldn't be leading on this front. It's the right thing to do. Far too often, and I think one of the and I want to thank all the presenters on either side of this issue, and certainly the ones that were brave enough to get up to that podium and tell their story, because it's important for us to hear the story. But one of the striking presentations that brought me back in history and remembrance in regards to weighing uncomfortable issues in respect to discrimination and bigotry was the fact that at once upon a time in our bylaws, Irish, blacks, Italian,